Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Performing Arts Series, brought to you by the Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts and the amazing Prince William Network. I am Danny Seidenberg, violist of the Turtle Island String Quartet, and one of your hosts for today's program. It's a program that we call The Art of the Groove. First of all, let me introduce the rest of the boys. We like to say, how many are in your string quartet? Well, we have Evan Price on violin, and Mr. David Balakrishnan on violin, and on cello, bass, and drums, Mr. Mark Summer. Thank you. Okay, now you know who we are. That first piece was entitled Jaco, and it was composed by Pat Metheny for a very different kind of ensemble. Now, you may have noticed that what we were doing, in addition to the music we were playing, but also the way we were playing it, was maybe a little different from a traditional string quartet that you might have seen before. And the reason for that is that we choose to play American music, music of our culture derived from jazz and popular forms, but we also love Beethoven, and we also love Haydn and Mozart as much as the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. So we have to find a way to do both. Now you might ask, how? Well, first of all, we might start out by playing our instruments a little differently, changing the performance practice of what we do. But we also have to remember that we are involved with a traditional form, a European form that's 200 years old. It's the most flexible and beautiful musical form probably ever created. So we have to pay also attention to ensemble and all the things, intonation and technique that you might study when you study the violin. But we need to find a way to discover the important difference, the most important thing that's different between our music of our culture today and that which existed 200 years ago. Now, 200 years ago, Beethoven was writing his string quartets. He came up with a very interesting rhythmic idea that in 1802 really turned everybody on, made the audiences get up out of their seats and start dancing because they couldn't control themselves. It was so compelling rhythmically. Well, I don't know. I guess you could move to that. Now what we're getting at is this is what makes our music different today. Now, Beethoven's time, this was very, very, very hip. And it was so hip that the cellist really felt compelled to play a melody, which he did. Kind of some walking music. Very straight by today's standards, but it has some movement, it has some momentum. And that's the important thing. Play that funky music, Evan. Get down. Yeah. What? That's not the way we like to do things. Okay. Well, that was from Tower of Power. That's called Who Do You Think We Are? And we'll play some of that later. Now, you may notice that there's a difference between those two examples. So the fundamental thing we're talking about here is rhythm. It's the backbeat. That's the influence that comes from African music and from folk styles that came with the immigrants. And it's present in all of the music that you hear on the radio. Everything that you hear that isn't classical has this backbeat, this rhythmic foundation. And that's what separates our music today from the music of 200 years ago. Now, we have to find a way to perform this way and be authentic and still maintain our string quartet tradition and roots. We're really going to be kind of speaking in a different language, and we have to learn to use the right vocabulary and the right accent. So, supposing I were to do this. that could be anything. In Beethoven's time, it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, like you heard earlier. But it could also be 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4. Ah. Want to do this with me? It feels different. Yeah. 3, 2. Makes you want to dance. That's what the backbeat does. Makes you really want to move in a different way. Henry Mancini String Quartet, number 19. Okay, well, you can keep doing that, but do it a little faster with me now. Be cool. So we have a rhythmic motif here. We have our backbeat, but this is more in a jazz context, which is something that we like to do. The other thing we need to be able to do is pretend that maybe we're playing other instruments, because string quartets never did this kind of thing before, and that's one of the difficult things. So when Mark is playing his cello, he's doing what's called a walking bass, but he's not thinking like a cellist. He's walking along playing a big old string bass, and he changes his technique a little bit, and that's what we have to do. We want all you violinists out there to go home and try this too. So we have to keep that backbeat going, because the backbeat is the foundation. That's the thing, that's the motor. That's what makes you want to dance. So we need to look at our instruments and figure out how to be percussionists, drummers. Now, a violin is nothing more than a hollow piece of wood that you can scratch and rub and, yeah, keep rubbing, Dave. Hit it and make all kinds of percussive sounds as long as you're careful and don't do any damage. What Dave is doing here is a very sophisticated backbeat. And now we have a cell of rhythm that almost begins to sound like something that would have been very strange in Beethoven's time. And yet it's still a string quartet. And the other part of a jazz combo that needs to be taken into consideration is the chordal instrument, the harmony. And that's what a piano will often do. You'll see 88 keys of the piano up here that need to be now turned into only 2 notes if we're clever about it. Now, Evan has gone to Jazz University for 200 years to learn how to bring 88 keys of a piano down to 2 notes. And now he's comping or accompanying, and he's doing it with a lot of rhythm and a lot of attention to the backbeat. And the other element that we need to think about now is to pretend that maybe we're playing other instruments now that we have this little combo going. We need to pretend that we're a guitar or a trumpet, or possibly a viola will pretend that he's a saxophone. Could happen. Yeah, that was, you can clap, it's okay. We don't need to be too formal here, appreciate that. And that was Bill's Bounce by Charlie Parker, who is possibly America's Mozart, the greatest saxophonist who ever lived. Like, make sure that you go home and listen to him after you buy your Turtle Island CD and your 9-inch nails and your 7-inch nails. We like it all, that's the point. So, here's the backbeat now, demonstrated yet again in a different context, more of a rock context. And another thing we like to do in this group that's different from a traditional string quartet is to write our own music. Now, David over here has written a beautiful piece that really rocks. And when I say really rocks, I mean it rocks because it has a big backbeat pulse to it. So listen for that while we play Skylife.
Thank you very much. Around about the time of the Civil War, there was a composer named Antonin Dvorak who came here from Europe, and he fell in love with the folk music of America, and he must have heard a melody that sounded something like this. And here's what he did with that melody. That's really beautiful, isn't it? Thanks. Well, you can hear how this very simple folk melody has been reharmonized. Now it sounds richer, more colorful, more European. But now it's missing that element that Danny was talking about that's uniquely American. That's the backbeat. It doesn't have much of a groove anymore. So it turns out that fiddle players have been using the backbeat in something called shuffle bows. And they have to play for barn dances, things like that, and they always have to play in situations where they have to carry the rhythm. So it's very important to them. So we'll take that same melody now and we'll apply the shuffle bow to it. And you can clap along if you'd like on the backbeat, of course. And Mark and Danny will bring you in. I'll kick it off. Here we go. You guys are great. You guys are great. Really maintaining that backbeat. That helps us a lot. All right. Cool. So we'll play the next piece we're going to play for you is a piece that I wrote. It's the very first piece I wrote for this group. In fact, it was written before this group was even together. And it has a lot of the styles that I love. It has classical music, composers like Stravinsky and Ravel. It has that shuffle bow technique we were just showing you before. It also has a little bit of music from India because my father's born in South India. The piece is called Eurasian Hoedown.
very much. Doesn't Dave write well? Isn't he nice? Give Dave another hand. Started this group. Okay, so we're just a few steps into this story. We're telling the story of American music, and one of the important elements that we need to include now is Latin American music. There's a huge influence on North American music from South America and from Central America and from the Caribbean, and if we're going to talk about that, we might as well go back all the way. It comes from Africa. What we're talking about all the way, even through up to here, up to this point in the presentation, has been the backbeat, right? We're talking about this motor that drives American music and drives the music of our culture. And it comes up in jazz, it comes up in that Pink Panther swing, and it comes up in rock and roll, comes up lots of different places, and the whole backbeat thing comes from Africa. But there's some other elements that come directly from Africa too, from West Africa, that came through the West Indies, known as clave. Does anybody know what clave is? Silence. Okay, does anybody know what claves are? Silence again. Claves are it's two different things. There's a percussion instrument from Latin America, which is basically two sticks that you hit together. But it also refers to a rhythm, a specific rhythm those sticks have to play every time they pick them up. And it's called clave. Clap along, those of you here. Clap along as soon as you get this rhythm. I guarantee you'll recognize it. Here we go. Great. So you have heard that before, right? You've heard that in a lot of different things. It comes up in folk music and lots of different kinds of American music, and you might not even realize if it's not Ricky Martin, you might not know that it's comes from Latin America, but it does. So that's called 2-3 clave because it's two beats grouped together, and then there's three beats grouped together. Now there's something devilishly complicated that I'm going to throw on you here. See if you can catch this. This is called 3-2 clave. Catch this. It's beginning to sink in. Okay, so we're going to play an example of a classic, what's known as a jazz standard, a classic American tune called On Green Dolphin Street. It's a jazz standard, and it incorporates these clave rhythms already. It's an original form. It did that, and we've sort of injected it with an even stronger element of salsa. So we're going to start it with a clave rhythm, and then you're going to add other elements of the band in, and you're going to hear how the rhythmic things fit together like pieces of a jigsaw puzzle. There's going to be other rhythms going on, cross rhythms that fit in with the clave, and there's going to be a chordal pattern called montuno. You hear all this. So we're going to try to simulate a salsa band. This is On Green Dolphin Street.
Thank you very much. We would like to play a piece by Jimi Hendrix. Jimi Hendrix was the Paganini of the electric guitar, and it has influenced every guitarist since. And we thought for the millennium we'd update his music just a little bit and add the hip-hop element that we so dearly love. And you know, to do hip-hop, you of course have to have a drum machine. And I think by now you probably will have figured out that we have 4 human drum machines. Drum machine number 1 over here, Dave Balakrishnan, will supply the groove for this next piece. This groove being a combination, you know, you take jazz and you put heavy backbeat rock and roll, you get hip-hop. So I press a button here. Dave's doing a little thing we call the chop. Good thing about this drum machine, I can just turn them up, speed them up. Before Dave seizes up, we're going to play this next tune. It's off the Electric Ladyland album by Jimmy. It's called Gypsy Eyes.
Difference is the backbeat. Yes, Jimi Hendrix was America's greatest chamber music composer. There's absolutely no doubt about that. You remember how I talked a lot about Beethoven and the traditional part of this, you know, and maybe we're not leaning so much on that up till this point, but we do want to show you that it can even apply to the venerable masters I speak of, none other than J.S. Bach. Ah, Bach, you say. Well, probably Bach would have enjoyed seeing the backbeat applied to his music because he was the 17th and 18th century equivalent of a jazz musician. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to do that for you in a piece that we call Bach's Mittagessen, or in English, Bach's Lunch.
Thank you very much. Now, we've been talking a lot about rhythm and about grooving, but you think about it, everything we've been playing has been in 4/4 time, I think. And of course, we've got lots of other rhythms we could be playing in. We could be playing in 3, right? We like to dance in 3, do waltzes. We could do 5s. We could be playing in 7, 9, 11, all sorts of different meters that could take us to different places rhythmically. We have a piece by the great Dave Brubeck, a wonderful jazz composer who got very interested in doing different kinds of rhythms, different times. So this piece we'll play is in 9. And as you know, 9 could be divided evenly and just it end up sounding like it was in 3. But what if it was divided unevenly? This rhythm goes something like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4. Try it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4. You notice when you get to the thanks a lot. When you get to the 3s, you have to sort of wiggle your hips a little bit and kind of dance with it. All right. So that's the rhythm that we'll be playing. But the interesting thing is, not only is it divided unevenly, but at the end of each phrase, there's an even division. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Try it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, bum, 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 bum. That's great. You guys are great. So it's a little bit of dance to it, and it's this piece, you'll love it. It's called Blue Rondo A La Turk. Thank you very much. Well, it's time for us to take some questions. It's an enjoyable time for us. If you have a question, come up and ask it, and we'll see if we can answer it. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, my name's Catherine Bailey, and I'm from Grand Park Middle School. I'd like to know, how did you guys come together as a string quartet?
How did we come together as a string quartet? Well, it's been a long process. The group came together 15 years ago, and David had started out with a lot of interesting music. He was writing for string quartet and made many records together. Some of these guys, Evan's our newest member. He just came about 3 years ago. But really comes from a great love of this music, and we sort of connected telepathically, I think, from all over the country. Danny came from New York. Dave and I were on the West Coast, and we came because this needed to be done. We needed to have improvisation and playing jazz in a string quartet. It was time.
Jan Thomas, I'm from Grand Park Middle School. My question is, as a group, how do you decide which music to play?
How do we decide? Well, that's a good question. We decide based on how much we love the music and also how well we think we can execute the style, something that we don't take music that we don't listen to and don't love. It's all music that we grew up listening to or that we've developed a great passion for. And the interesting thing, to follow up on that last question, is as new members come into this group, they bring their interests and their love of different styles of music, and sometimes we pass around tapes and say, you should listen to this music. What do you think about this composer? What do you think about this idea? And we get each other excited so that we can do a really great job for you all. That's it. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Ryan Elmore from Fredland Middle School. How many CDs have you made?
How many CDs have we made? You know, that's great. We've actually made enough CDs to almost lose count, because we've done, not only have we made our own CDs, but we've also participated in compilation CDs. I guess the official count might be 12, which of course includes our latest CD, The Art of the Groove, which is available at our website, which I'll tell you about at the end of the program. And yeah, that's it. We have a phone call. All right, we've got a phone call from Richmond, Virginia. Go ahead, caller.
Well, actually, the young man just answered my question, but I was just flipping through the channels, and I was listening to some of the sort of like hip-hop, jazz flavor you have there, and I really enjoyed that. I was just about to ask you about what's the line that you did with the hip-hop type of feel, when you had the guy right there pressing the button, and he was sort of like scratching and that type of feel. What album is that on? Or do you have a...
Well, the original is Electric Ladyland album of Jimi Hendrix, and we've got it. It's on our Who Do You Think You Are record. It's a tune called Gypsy Eyes, and as you notice, it involves a lot of slapping, tapping, scraping, and just about everything we can do on these little wooden boxes in order to create the groove. Got another question?
Yeah, hi, my name is Jamila. I'm from Fredland Middle, and I would like to know, where else have you all performed?
Oh yes, that's. I'd have to think about that. We've been all over the world. I'd say the most exotic places I can think of that we've been to have been Singapore and Japan, but we've been to also wonderful places like Spain, Germany, our second home. We go there sometimes 4 times a year. And Finland, some of us went swimming in the icy, cold sea in Finland. Of course, we don't play concerts in the water. We're usually on dry land. And let's see, Canada, and we're looking forward to going just about everywhere you can take this string quartet, which is just about everywhere. Oh, let's see. We've got a phone call from Richmond, Virginia again. All right, go ahead, caller.
Yes, I was wondering if you guys ever made any recordings with any classical music, any Beethoven or Brahms or anything.
That's a timely question. What we have recorded at the moment, we've recorded adaptations of Vivaldi's Winter Concerto from the Four Seasons. That's on a record called By the Fireside. It's also on, I believe, is there a record on the orchestra record? I think there's a movement of a recording we did with Naomi Yarvi and the Detroit Symphony. But we have a new piece by our youngest member, the newest member, Evan Price, that has no real Beethoven in it, he tells us, and yet it sounds just like the master did it. It's a combination of Ron Carter's Little Waltz and a Beethoven scherzo, or a pseudo scherzo. So you'll be hearing more of that from us. Let's see. I think we have another question.
Yes, my name is Brian Campbell, and I go to Woodbridge Middle School, and I would like to know, do you teach as well as perform?
Yes, thank you for asking that question. We do teach quite a bit. Of course, we have a summer residency at University of Massachusetts at Amherst called Jazz in July. Second week of July, we'll be teaching. We teach in a week. We get young string players to play just like us in a week, if you can believe that or not. So anyway. And we teach privately, and we do a lot of lecture demonstrations that also combine a master class. Where, as part of our residency with the Kennedy Center, we've been going into schools and in an hour getting string ensembles to be able to play a jazz piece that we recorded on our first record. Let's see. Yes, we've got a phone call from Kansas. Go ahead, caller.
Yeah, my name's Eric. Wanted to let y'all know y'all are great, first off. And I wanted to know what y'all name were and what each of y'all's favorite song is.
Oh, wow. Well, let's see. We've got on violin, I'll go around the ring. Evan Price on violin, Danny Seidenberg, David Balakrishnan on violin, and I'm cellist Mark Summer. And your favorite song, real quick.
Blue Rondo A La Turk.
Who do you think you are?
Evan seems to agree. Evan seems to agree with Danny, and I think we're gonna wrap it up now. I'd like to thank you for being with us. It's been a great pleasure. I hope everyone enjoyed the program. This concludes the Kennedy Center and Prince William Network distance learning programs for the year. We hope you'll join us next year for another series of entertaining and educational programs. Thank you. You can get in touch with us by visiting our website at tisq.com, and if you have any questions, you can email us at our website or at pwnet.org. We also invite you to visit the Kennedy Center and the Prince William Network websites at your addresses on the screen. There you will find information and the registration form on upcoming programs and resources. Thank you very much. We're going to play one last piece for you. Sit down in your seats. You're going to like this. It's the piece we played a little snippet of earlier by the great funk group Tower of Power. It's called Who Do You Think You Are? And I want you to listen for what? The backbeat. Thank you.